Right now in the Wood Whisperer Guild, we're building one of the biggest projects I've ever made, a queen-size platform bed made from solid babinga. It's going to be pretty awesome. But one of the challenges with this project is how to deal with these really long pieces of wood, how to cut them to length accurately. For instance, these are for the headboard of the bed, and I need to cut 3 of them to exactly 60.5 inches long. So how do we do it? Well, let me introduce you to my little friend here. I call him FrankenSled. Now the sled itself is something we built way back in episode 146, so if you want to build a cross-cut sled, go check that out. One of the handiest things you could ever make for your workshop. Now what we're doing differently here is we are adding an auxiliary fence, a very long auxiliary fence that allows us to put a stop all the way at the very end. And the stop here is really important, but it doesn't need to be anything more than just a square chunk of scrap material. What's important though is that you clamp it in place with a lot of pressure, because as we move a workpiece into this, we want to make sure that this doesn't move. If that moves, game over, the whole thing is screwed up. So you want to make sure that that is on nice and tight. Now you certainly don't need to use anything fancy for this auxiliary fence material. This is just a 2x4 that I jointed and planed, so it's nice and square. And that's really important because I'm going to use the fence for reference, clamp this to the fence, and then if this is nice and straight, then I know I can bring my workpiece up to this auxiliary fence and I can count on it being nice and straight and in line with my cross-cut fence. All right, the other thing I want to point out is over here. With such a long overhang hanging over the saw, you really want to have a fence that extends to the other side. Even though my workpiece is going to be over here and I'm just going to have a small cutoff that drops on the other side of the blade, it's nice to have clamping surface over here. All right, so if I can clamp it all the way down on the right, gravity is really taking care of the left-hand side, so I do have one additional clamp to help hold this 2x4 to the actual fence itself. But I find that if you span both sides of the fence, it's much more stable and easier to use. Now let's say this is our workpiece that we're cutting. Of course, we want to make sure that the blade is over the height of the workpiece. We need to cut all the way through it. So it just makes sense that if we have this piece going all the way across, the fence itself has to be taller than the workpiece, right? Because otherwise, when we make that first cut, we're going to cut straight through it, and now this clamp isn't doing us any favors, right? So it's really important that the fence be nice and tall. And a 2x4 is really, for just about anything we're going to use or have to cut in the workshop, a 2x4 is probably adequately high. And as you can see, my workpiece can slide right under my clamp head. And then when I make this cut, I still have probably 1.5 inches of material here above the workpiece, so this stays intact. Now the final part of my setup here is for safety more than anything, and that's giving my workpiece some support. With a long workpiece like that, you don't want to take any chances of it possibly falling down, so this gives me a nice amount of support. The one thing I'll point out though is notice I'm running it the opposite way you normally would. Usually you run your workpiece across the roller. But in this case, I need support this way. I need it, at least a good 12 inches of support. So I find it easier to turn the whole thing 90 degrees and wax the roller here, and the workpiece just slides nice and easily across a nice solid surface all the way up and then all the way back. Now we know we need the cuts to be 60.5 inches long. So what I did was I put the stop toward the end, clamped it in place, made sure it was nice and square, but I'm not really worried about the exact location of the stop. Once the stop is in place, then I'm going to take a measurement from the stop over and mark at 60.5 inches. And then all I have to do is line up the pencil line with the kerf cut in the sled. That's one of the things that makes sled so awesome and powerful, is the fact that you could just use this cut itself to line up future cuts. So I put a second line here to represent the kerf. It's about 1/8 of an inch, but I'm really mostly worried about the 60.5 inch line here. So I'm just going to line it up with the edge of the sled, clamp everything down, and I should be ready to go. Now back to the workpiece, before you actually use this setup, you want to trim one end nice and square, and you could certainly use your sled to do that before you add the auxiliary fence. You could even use your chop saw if you've got a nice blade on there. Just make sure that one end is nice and square, because the square end is going to go toward the stop. And this is now set up to be our second cut in the series to trim us to final length. So I'm just going to push down on the workpiece. You can see it certainly wants to fall down this way. So push down, and then I'm going to slowly slide it over until it makes contact with the stop. Don't want to apply a lot of pressure there. I don't want to push the stop out of position. At this point, I can take a clamp clamp the piece to the fence. Now, if you want, you could add another clamp down here depending on the weight of your workpiece, but this seems pretty stable to me. It's feeling nice and flat over here. Pretty confident to go through with this setup. And just like that, we have a part here cut to 60.5 inches. So now all I have to do is get my other two parts, clamp them in place, and make the cut. This is an incredibly powerful thing. It's something you should always think about when you have parts of your project that are the same size. You want to make sure whether they're long, short, wide boards, whatever it is, if they're the same size, try to use the same setup to cut all of them, and also try to have a stop block in place, because for me, I don't want to count on my ability to measure, mark, and cut to a line. Maybe I'll do that once, and that'll be for the setup, right? And then once that stop block is in place, you could apply that setup for the rest of the boards. So anytime you could batch out similar parts, do it. It's going to make a big difference in the final quality level of the work you produce.